Welcome to episode 4, The Past, Present, and Future of LM. Today, on our final episode, I'm speaking with Dr. Carmelo Melendez, Director of the Office of Legacy Management. Welcome, Carmelo.
Thank you. Thanks for being here.
To start with the last 3 episodes, we give a little background of whoever we're interviewing. So could you talk about growing up in Puerto Rico and what led to your interest in mechanical engineering?
Sure. I had a great childhood in Puerto Rico, and I remember taking doorknobs apart and putting them back together, or at least my mother saying, please put that back so it works. And my sister was already in chemical engineering school. I thought that with a little bit of prodding from family that it would be a good career. So what started as, okay, let's try this out, in 1984, 1985, ended up in 2007 when I, was able to complete my postgraduate work in engineering management. And it's been a great career.
So you obviously continued your education after your bachelor's. So what motivated you to seek out advanced degrees after that?
So it was an understanding that there was a lot I didn't know. I was already in the workforce. I was a civil engineer corps officer in the Navy, and I ended up doing facilities management, what we normally know in our cities as public works, doing construction management and environmental cleanup and environmental contracting. And I thought it was really interesting. So one of the benefits of being a civil engineer corps officer in the Navy is that you're provided a free graduate education. And I remember telling my personnel management officer, I think my 3 choices are University of Hawaii, University of Florida, or University of Puerto Rico, and I'm going to do civil engineering, environmental engineering. And he said, yeah, I get it. Beaches are in the way, right? So went to the University of Florida, had another great education in public works management, wastewater, solid waste, hazardous waste, remediation, and that made me a more rounded naval officer, civil engineering corps officer to go on into further assignments.
Dabbled in a little bit of everything.
Dabbled in a little bit of everything. That's right. Yeah.
So you brought up your time in the Navy. Could you talk about your experience in the military and how that influenced your management style?
Sure. I had a great experience in the Navy. I highly recommended it. I thought the Civil Engineer Corps was an excellent place to work. I had assignments all over the world. No single assignment was the same. From the beginning, you're entrusted with working with others and supervising technical work and using your business acumen. And you're responsible sometimes for a dozen people, 100 people, hundreds of people, and millions of dollars to provide readiness for the fleet and the Fleet Marine Force. And a lot of the work what we do is civil works that protects human health and the environment. Very similar to what we do here in LM.
So it kind of set you up, gave a good foundation for your next jobs in LM.
Yeah, it was an excellent foundation. I remember when I came to LM in 2016, my mother asked, so what are you going to do now? Because I heard you're changing jobs. And when I explained to her what LM does, she was like, oh, this was like tailor-made for you.
So to backtrack a little bit, for people who are not familiar, what is the Office of Legacy Management? What do we do?
So the Office of Legacy Management is a technical office. It's a program management office in the Department of Energy that looks after post-remediation caretaking of places around the U.S. where environmental remediation has been completed. Environmental remediation that was needed because of defense atomic activities. And we do environmental stewardship and long-term maintenance of those environmental remedies to make sure that the remedy is protected, that the remedy meets its criteria of keeping drinking water safe, keeping flora and fauna coming back to the sites, as well as being able to keep the communities engaged on what has taken place. And we are, I would say, the folks who do that warranty, that red tail light warranty when the last pickup truck of the remediation contractor leaves. Who's going to keep looking after the site? It is us.
I always tell people when they ask me what the Office of Legacy Management is that we have the most perfect name for what we do. Legacy management, like that just kind of encapsulates everything in one little nice name. Like, I think it's perfect.
Absolutely.
So we're going to take a quick little break and then we'll move on and talk about LM some more.
Great.
For more information on LM's programs, check out our webpage at energy.gov/LM and click on Programs. In addition to serving as director, you also served in multiple positions within DOE. So can you talk about those roles and how they differed and how they prepared you for your current role?
Sure. I came to DOE in 2008, and my first set of duties were to work in the Office of Engineering and Construction Management, what is now the Office of Project Management, to provide independent assessment of how the large projects that are being delivered by the Office of Environmental Management or the Office of Science were being delivered on time, on budget, on schedule, on the key performance parameters. And that was like throwing a kid in a pool, right? To swim, because obviously the Department of Energy is very different. And not only did I have to learn the culture of the organization, but get acquainted with a different set of missions. It could be a project in the Office of Science, in Lawrence Livermore, or in Fermi National Lab, or an environmental project in Savannah River National Site. So it was a quick, fast, steep learning curve, but it was great. It was challenging, and I had great leadership in the Office of Construction Management, and we were able to make a difference and provide valuable input to make course corrections in different projects here. From then, I went to the Office of Environmental Management, and I became the project manager or program management for environmental projects. And this was as the Recovery Act was developing or was being implemented. So I was very blessed to be at a moment where we could make decisions and have the resources to take projects that were on the shelf or take environmental projects that could have used funding to accelerate the impact and actually made them a reality. I had great mentors and great collaboration. I got out to the field and was able to kind of provide that command and control or more camaraderie and expertise to align the execution to what the timing demands and resources were. Excellent experience. And from there, I left the department for a couple of years. I went to Quantico and became the regional engineer for the National Capital Region and Marine Corps Combat Development Command for environmental, energy, facilities, infrastructure, planning. So it was a little bit of everything. Wonderful experience. And I had probably about 700, 800 folks that I worked very closely with in what we used to call the G5 or G Facilities Division, and wonderful leaders in the Marine Corps. The opportunity came up to come back to DOE, and luck favors the prepared. I competed for the position of senior executive in the Office of Management, and I became the senior real property officer. I was the office director for a program support office inside the Office of Management that mainly deals with asset management. What is the infrastructure and facilities portfolio in real property and in personal property for the Department of Energy? Very wide. So it's at the agency level, and we were the subject matter experts inside the department on what to do with programming and planning for infrastructure, as well as personal property and fleet management, vehicles, specialty vehicles, normal vehicles, specialty personal property, regular personal property. In a time where there were a lot of changes in the 2012 to 2016 period, with emphasis on real property and innovative ideas and divesting of unnecessary expenditures. And during that period, under the leadership of Secretary Muniz, we were able to accomplish many things to use the resources that we had at hand more efficiently. And at the same time, because of the confidence we built that we could manage our facilities well and that we needed to invest to make our national labs and all our facilities to be ready for the mission that we had in the future mission, we were able to receive additional funding to do the repair needs that we needed, as well as divest or demolish or sell unneeded property. I was at a point in my career that I said, wow, this is great. I can do this for the rest of my life, right? Very talented, very group of dedicated folks. And during that 4-year period, I went to all the DOE sites, active sites in the inventory. I said to myself at one point, wow, legacy management, that's a very neat mission. And it's a whole different set of sites
Right.
because they're not active,
Right.
right? So the Lord works in mysterious ways, and luck favors the prepared. And there was an announcement because the director of the office at the time was retiring. I threw my name in the hat just to make sure my interview skills were still good in case I needed
Just
them.
practice.
Just practicing. And Lord behold, I got a call from the undersecretary at the time, and it was like, please hold for the Secretary of Energy. And the secretary said, I would like you to take this job, and I need an answer in the next 30 minutes. I said, yes, sir. Let me call my wife and call my boss. and I work for a wonderful senior executive here, Ingrid Called, in the Office of Management. She said, well, that job doesn't come open very often. It's probably once every 10 years. So if you want it, you need to say yes. And there was a pause, and she said, I'll miss you, but I think you'll do a good job, right? So I called my wife, and she said, well, if this is what you want to do, I think you shouldn't miss the opportunity. So the rest is history, right? I showed up here, I think it was in November, towards the end of November, beginning of December of 2016.
So was that helpful coming from EM and then going into legacy management?
Oh, it was wonderful.
Yeah.
It was wonderful. I had spent time in the Office of Project Management understanding project delivery and the culture of the department. I had spent time in EM understanding what does it take to do remediation inside DOE sites. Remediation of environmental hazards in the Navy or the other exposed projects that I had been, there were a different set of contaminants, different set of sites, different set of contracting model. So going to EM was a blessing in disguise. And then being at the Office of Asset Management, I was able to see the whole enterprise, deal directly with the Office of Management and Budget in the Office of the President, be able to interact with the Chief Financial Officer, staff here, talk to staffers in Congress about how we do things. So it provided me a well-rounded platform to actually say, I don't know the details of LM yet, but I feel confident that I can continue growing from this really good foundation I got during those assignments here.
Not like throwing a kid into a pool that time. Mm-hmm. So what are your current responsibilities then as director?
So I am the program secretarial officer. I actually have a designation letter from the Secretary of Energy that says I'm responsible to carrying out her responsibilities of long-term stewardship under the Atomic Energy Act to make sure that we maintain the readiness of the sites, the remedies, we control the environmental liability, and we're able to fulfill our responsibilities to all the regulators and mainly what's most important to me is fulfilling that trust responsibility with communities. The other part of the job is making sure that we have a properly staffed, motivated, combined team of wonderful federal employees and contractor partners to help us execute the job. In today, over 100 sites. In about 20 years, about 120 sites, 125 sites.
So, what does a typical day look for you then? What's a regular day for Carmelo?
A regular day is good therapy for Alzheimer's. I get up in the morning and look forward to coming to work, which
That's good.
is great.
Mhm.
I'm all that. If anybody can do that, you have a blessing to start every day. I look forward to coming in, and I quickly kind of see in the morning brief what has been hot in the media, what's been hot for the secretary, what is the plan of the day or plan of the week. We do that review once a week between the operations staff, the site management staff, the business staff, not only in the federal side but in the partner side. So what are we doing? Where are we doing it? What are the next set of sequences for that day or this week? A lot of internal communications. It kind of takes a village, right? So
Mhm.
uh, looking to being responsive to what congressional affairs may need. We are on 32 states, 25 tribes, seeing what public affairs is handling from the previous day or the current day. What are the technical requirements or subjects that we will be discussing for the day, and perhaps getting a refresher from that. Checking where we are on our strategic goals. Is this moving the ball forward on what we need to be moving the ball? Or do we need to take a good pause, because good judgment happens in the pause, and trying to figure out if we have the right resources, right personnel? Do we approach the subjects correctly? And then after that is a de jour of issues. I normally have to pause for a second. Which state, which site, which statute are we talking about? Are we talking about Uranium Mill Tailings Control Act 1 or 2? Is it in Colorado or is it in Wyoming? Do I have to think about EPA regulations or NRC? Who's asking the question? A professional staff member at Energy and Water Appropriations Committee, be it House or Senate, or is it Armed Services Committee? Do we need to run this information through General Counsel? So I love all the technical challenges here, but this is one of those jobs where you have to have wide situational awareness on what it takes to do the work. And one of my messages for the folks here is that we are an applied science and engineering organization with strong communication skills and genuinely committed to environmental justice and long-term stewardship. So whatever we do every day needs to be aligned with that.
Mhm. And it definitely looks like you are looking at like short term, what's happening right now, and then also looking at, okay, how is this affecting our goals in the future as well?
Absolutely. So we always think about tactical, operational, and strategic goals. So if you think about an airplane, it's a 50,000 foot versus 30,000
Mhm.
feet towards 100 feet runway space, right? What's the alligator closest to the boat
Yeah.
type of thing. We also think in life cycle baselines and short-term goals, or immediate or intermediate initial operating capability or full operating capability, because we're here for perpetuity. And that was a word that is hard for some people to understand. When we accept a site, we're here throughout all the changes that may happen, not only in the 5 years before it transitions to us, but also in a rolling 75-year life cycle baseline of activities and costs and remedial actions and maintenance. Some of our remedies are designed for 200 years or 1,000 years.
We're looking forward right now. Let's bring it back and look at the 20-year history of LM. How would you describe how the office has grown in the past 20 years?
Let me back up. When I came in here in 2016, I probably sat for about 3 weeks reading things. And I realized I and a lot of people who don't work in LM don't realize the breadth of responsibilities as well as the challenges that folks before us undertook and delivered in environmental cleanup in the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s. I joke with the folks here that my head probably was shaking for all those 3 weeks because I there were some things I was reading that it was hard to believe,
Yeah.
like the Nevada offsite
Mhm.
program or the amount of work that today people take for granted, but it took to create disposal cells and clean up sites like Weldon and Fernal. Wonderful work by the folks in environmental management at the time. LM grew out of necessity. The time came where there were enough sites being completed for remediation where the National Council of State Legislators, the Association of Attorney Generals, and the Association of Environmental State Officers, and many others were asking, so when you leave, who's going to implement this engineering controls? When you leave, who do we call? And it wasn't Ghostbusters. Okay.
That would have been easy.
That would have been easy, right? What do you do? And I remember when I was in graduate school, and even today in the Handbook for Environmental Engineering, out of 700 pages on that handbook, probably there's just one or half a page dedicated to long-term stewardship post-remediation action. The people that were here at the time quickly realized, along with great input from many of the regulators and states and communities, that they needed to create an organization that was going to fulfill that. Partially new ground. In other places was ad hoc. In other countries, this concept was not even developed. And very decisively, they established a new program office, no different than the current secretary establishing new program offices to meet the demands of the workload for the bipartisan infrastructure legislation and the infrastructure bill. In this particular case, was to fulfill those requirements. What started as 33 sites and a number of folks from Grand Junction, from EM, from NNSA, from Oak Ridge, from headquarters that were thrown together. Today, we have an organization that is recognized by the Office of Management and Budget and the Office of the President as operating as a high performance organization, meaning we have undergone not once, but two organizational reviews on what is the best way to execute this work. From a performance work statement, what is the work to be done? Where is it to be done? What are the requirements? What are the resources? Is this inherently governmental? Where do we get the smartest people to do this? And the rest of the complex, primarily in the national labs and in the weapons lab, we have a model of government-owned, contractor-operated M&O, operations and management contractors, that perform that function, and that function comes from the time of establishing Los Alamos and establishing Livermore and so on. In our case, during that process, we not only, throughout the years, and this took more than 10 years, it defined what work needed to be done, where did it need to be done, what was the best way for delivering that, and what internal controls or commitments we were going to keep honest on. Today, we have talented but relatively lean federal staff, primarily in the field. We have identified that most of the activities that are part of the long-term stewardship and maintenance are best operated by a commercial activity, which is a contractor that we can partner with, an environmental services O&M, operations and maintenance contractor. And we have also determined and proven that a small business can do that job. And today, we are embarking on establishing our next set of goals for a strategic plan between 2025 and 2030. What is the scope of the work that we need to undertake? What is the human capital plan for the federal staff? As well as what should we aim for the next contract or the next task order with.
So, for LM's accomplishments in the last 20 years, what are you most proud of? So, when you talk about your position, what is something that you just get super excited to talk about that you feel the most pride in?
Wow, that's a difficult question. So in the technical aspect, right? So I'm going to hit technical and social aspects. In the technical aspects is we have maintained remedies in every one of our sites. We not only maintain the remedy to make sure that those contaminants, the residual contaminants, or that the conditions that were built, be disposal cells or barriers or the revegetation, that those perform and protect human health and environment. We have severed the pathway between a source, a receptor, and a pathway. And one of my happiest moments was recently, I want to say during the last year, we were invited by the tribal government of the Spokane tribe to go to our disposal cell in their reservation. And we were standing at this massive area that you couldn't really tell that it was a disposal cell because the vegetation was back and it had a nice drainage. And there was this group of wild horses, really healthy, that came this way.
Hmm.
And obviously, one of the conservation officers for the tribe was waving at the horses so they wouldn't run us over. But that ecosystem's back.
Yeah. Being able to see
Being
that.
able
Yeah.
to see that is priceless. On the social aspect, I think one of the things that we all take a lot of pride on is that we are part of the communities and we have the transparency and sense of urgency and collaboration. And in some communities, the trust back, like in Fernal, to have very open discussions and help each other on what is the best thing for the community, what is the best thing for the site, and as well as educate others.
I think a particular site that you can see that a lot is Las Colonias Park and other sites that have shown very effective beneficial reuse. So, what do you say? What do you think that shows about DOE's overall cleanup program that we can have successful sites like that and community engagement?
You bring up what we would consider one of the flagships of our successes in the portfolio of assets here. Las Colonias site is a prime site that we all feel proud, the community and the state and all of us, about what can be done with a site or an asset, using the language of portfolio, an asset that has been impaired because that land was contaminated at one point. It was remediated, and we wanted to put it back into reuse. That's the primary goal for this office for all the sites that we take care of is long-term stewardship and protection and beneficial reuse in any way, shape, or form. So in Las Colonias, and I was there recently, you have people recreating, using the zip line and swimming and tubing. You see commercial activity. You see campers. You see folks who are using the different plots of land for being able to have the economy thrive and the taxation basis of the city be useful, as well as you have mixed use, industrial and residential. Not every location can be a Las Colonias, but we should strive to do that.
All right, we're going to take a quick break before we continue on.
Great.
For more information on LM sites, check out our webpage at energy.gov/LM and click on sites. In our last 3 episodes, each person, Eric, Tanya, and Sean, have talked about environmental justice. So, can you explain it to those who are unfamiliar with it, and why is it important for LM to be mindful as it executes its mission?
Environmental justice is one of those things that we all should have learned in kindergarten and apply.
Mm-hmm.
And common sense sometimes is is not a common virtue, right?
Good way to
Um,
put it.
environmental justice is treating everybody fairly and inclusive in issues that can or could affect them in their daily lives, and giving them not only a voice, but giving them a friendly ear that is willing to listen and be inclusive and bringing them to be part of the solution. Because of our mission and the veil of secrecy, especially in the nuclear stockpile, this agency, as well as many others, didn't live up to that all the time, everywhere. We are committed and have been committed for the last 20 years or more to actually mend that and be transparent and provide that friendly ear and that friendly voice and be inclusive in the fair treatment of all people that can be affected or has been affected by all this. We don't have a monopoly of answers. We seem to have had corner the market on wrong decisions sometimes and not treating people well, or we could have done it better.
Mm-hmm.
If you identify, as we have identified, very talented individuals that have led us to see and execute the necessary actions to embrace that as part of our ethos and our identity, I just don't see how you can do it any other way.
Mm-hmm.
So, what is a manifestation of environmental justice? Is providing an open door to those who want to know more or have concerns about what has been done at a site in the while it was being in use or during remediation, or what we do today in long-term stewardship. Are we doing the right thing? Can they trust us? Can they believe us? Are we open to suggestions? And that's not a East Coast thing or a West Coast thing. It's not a black, white, yellow, green. No, it's not geared to any regionality or any specific group. I think it has to be part of what we do for a living in this office. We are a group of scientists and engineers and support staff that is trying to do a job, but if we don't communicate well and we don't respect others and treat them fairly and inclusive, I think then it doesn't matter how well you do your technical job.
Mm-hmm. That leads into my next question. And so you've worked hard to establish partnerships with our tribal partners, various agencies, and our stakeholders. So why do you find that so important to focus on and establish these strong connections?
It's easy to hide in the corner with the light bulb off and scream at the darkness. It is hard to bring daylight and be inclusive and not be able to see that there's a common ground.
Mm-hmm.
So, by us, and you're right, one of my first strategic goals was either establish partnerships or revive partnerships with our regulators, the Army Corps of Engineers, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, the EPA, the tribes, the states, because I don't want to be screaming at the darkness. And I want to embrace the same things they want to embrace. We all want our kids to grow up healthy. We all want the best we can for our communities. We all have a role to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think by being at the table and amiably and openly looking at different point of views make us a better organization.
Mm-hmm.
I think that that has been, you asked earlier, one of been of the biggest accomplishments is how all of us in this program office, the combined team, has not only the dedication to do their job, but their willingness to establish partnerships with all those that we interact with. We call it stakeholders, but is the people and communities where we are and where we need to be for perpetuity.
Mm-hmm. So what is next for LM?
Oh, what is next for LM? There's a hallway joke always that the easy part is done, the hardest part is coming or is here upon us. By the numbers, we have another, I would say, 20 sites, 25 sites coming between the FOOSRAP program, the former Utilized Site Remedial Action Program by the Army Corps. Some are Uranium Mill Tailings Control Act sites through the NRC from private licensees, and we have some others along the way. Um, so we need to scale up to be able to accept that workload. We need to maintain the engagement that we have, and that is by hiring and retaining motivated and qualified team members, be contractors or partners or be federal employees. And we need to have a sense of urgency and a bias for action because the conditions under which many of the models were done to predict how groundwater was going to behave or how contaminants were going to migrate or how climate was going to affect or not affect many of our sites has been a factor and will be a factor because all models are useful, but none of them are perfect. Technology developments that are coming into play. One of the most important partnerships we have is with the National Lab Network. We have a very robust applied science and technologies group here in the office, but by bringing the 17 national labs and primarily the legacy and environmental stewardship group in the national labs provides us options to maintain or repair the remedies with technology or knowledge that wasn't available in the 80s or 90s and 2000s. So if I had to say what are my three priorities going forward, the first one would be that we need to maintain and defend the environmental remedies with technical competence. Maintaining is the physical aspect of going out there and making sure that the disposal cells have the right integrity, that the groundwater samples and the treatment is being done correctly. Defending is communication, education, and outreach, that institutional control. And we need the technical competence in both areas. The second one is we're a government activity, so we need positive accountability for our financial, meaning our money, information, which is geospatial information or records from the 1940s, 1950s, all the ways now, and the physical assets that we have, the equipment, the facilities, the land that we look after. We have over 60,000 acres that we have some kind of interest on. So we need to know with business acumen, are we managing those correctly? And I would say that finally, in order to be successful over the next 20 years, the communication and collaboration with the stakeholders has to be effective with an objective sense of environmental justice. Some of the remedies, some of the sites, some of the work that has been done, and I will use Weldon because I was recently there. Weldon Spring in Missouri, you have within the next 20 years a generation that will come into the workforce at the site, or they will move into the O'Fallon community or move into Missouri, and they will not know what happened there. So some of our employees, coworkers who are currently working with us were there when they were building the disposal cell, when there was a set of decisions and there was a background of understanding why those decisions were made. And I think that that communication is cyclical, but it needs to be recurrent. And so for us, the next 20 years are full of opportunities. Okay. We will probably grow in the number of the combined team between the strategic partner, the contractor partner, and the federal staff. We will have more physical sites. There will be new climatic changes. There will be a need to do sustainment, which is the regular maintenance, restoration, and perhaps the modernization of some of those remedies. We live between uncertainty and certainty and agreement and disagreement. I like to say that I inherit sites that are relatively simple. They abide by standards. We can use best practices. The communication with the stakeholders is very rational, very simple sites.
Hmm.
And I want to use an example. Colony, New York, there was a site that we collaborated with the state, collaborated with stakeholders. The soil was remediated. It was backfill. The contamination was taken away. The residual contamination is monitored. And or Las Colonias, and we were both and those sites were able to bring that site back to life. So that site and Colony was sold because it's in the middle of the town, and we did the right thing, right? But there's also progression on many of the sites where you get to the complicated, and there's political decision making, and there's judgmental decision making. And then some of the situations we have are very complex. We have new emergent practices. We have trial and error on how to go about monitoring a remedy. What is the dialogue on debate and educating people? And sometimes it edges on the chaotic, right? Our job and our mission is to operate within that set of certainty and uncertainty, agreement and disagreement, and be able to take all that into account and provide a sense of assurance and maintain the level of trust that we're here for perpetuity to maintain the remedy and protect human health and the environment.
So this might be a difficult question for you, but sometime down the road, long down the road, when you decide to retire, what do you hope people say about you and the work that you personally have accomplished?
I would like people to say that I was part of a team in legacy management that cared and made a difference.
Just keep it simple like that.
Keep it
Yeah,
simple.
I like that. All right. Well, that was my last question. Do you have any closing thoughts or anything you want to share with our listeners before we close out?
We'd love to hear from folks at the communities. We want to be able to do better. We all have blind spots. We all have
Mhm.
histories. We are in a generation where we didn't have to live the trials and tribulations and the risk associated with many of the activities
Mhm.
that the nation did and the corrective actions the nation did to give us the means to have a security, a global security, a national security in many aspects. We are committed to perhaps not only build from all the remedies and all the good practices that we have today, but also to be a voice and be able to share with others what has been done in a site in a particular state or under a particular set of regulatory environments, to learn from those and be able to provide a better platform for folks in communities with us to tell the story, to maintain the protectiveness of the sites, and to have the beneficial reuse, best possible use. So get in touch with us. We'd love to hear from you.
Thank you so much, Carmelo, for speaking with me today. And I just want to thank all of the listeners who have tuned in for our past 4 episodes. If you want more information on our 20-year anniversary, check out the LM webpage for additional news and content. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you.
For more information on events and current information about LM sites and programs, connect with us on social media on Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube.